This is a beginning point. This is the beginning of the rest of my life. I got the meaning, and I got to write it down, because I don't want to forget it. Just win, baby.
And welcome back to the Gold Jacket Podcast. With me, your host, as always, Gymnastic. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, man, how you been?
I've been good, man. I've been waiting for this episode all week since last week's episode. We got some surefire episodes through right up to the draft, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, man, I'm pretty pumped about it. We got a special guest again this week. Tonight's guest is the one, the only, Andrew Hall. Andrew, man, how you doing?
Doing great, guys. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. You want to tell the people where they can find you?
Sure, yeah. So I wrote the last couple of years for Pro Football Network, PFN. I just started writing actually in April. My first couple articles are coming out for Fantasy Pros, so looking forward to that. But obviously you can find me on Twitter. It's where I do a lot of my work, just saying hi, messing with people, sending gifts, at Andrew Hall FF. Come say hi.
Nice.
Love it. Absolutely love it. This is going to be a fun episode because we're going to dive into the 2020 class. We're going to kind of react to their rookie seasons. And then we're going to look at 2021 class, kind of react to who's our top 3, top 5 at respective positions. And then we're going to go into an overall ranking at each position to kind of draw out a picture of what the value looks like going forward based on the rookie season we saw and based on the incoming talent and what we think that they have that's going to translate to the NFL. And if they're going to translate well from a fantasy perspective for many years and where you should really be investing this year, this offseason. So let's dig right into it, boys. Let's go after the quarterback position. So when we talk about our rank in the 2020 class, we're going to talk about how that we rank after the 2020 season, not what we thought of coming into last season. Because, I mean, we can dwell on the past or we can look at what we know for certain is happening. And so let's start with you, Andrew. For the quarterbacks, we're just going to look at top 3 in each class. How do you rank the top 3 for the rookie seasons that they just had?
Yeah, so I think heading into the year was Joe Burrow. And for me, coming out of the year, I don't know if I can give Burrow the number 1 spot just because of the injury and the production and the question marks. So I think Herbert, who was not number 1 heading into the year, this time last year, Herbert was 3, maybe 4 even on some lists. But I think Herbert's my number 1 after what we saw. I think he produced well and lived well under fire, under pressure. I think that says a lot to me about his future potential. So for me, it's Herbert, then Burrow, then Tua. But I don't think that there is some argument, I guess. Let's put it this way. I don't think that there's a lot of certainty in those 3 because all 3 of them could become one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and I would be okay with it. So they're all 3 pretty solid to me. And I mean, I think 2 is the clear 3. Hurts is no offense, Connor, but Hurts is the 4. I'm not going to put him above Tua just yet. But I think that's kind of where it comes out, just the way that the season shuffled out for me.
If you have paid attention to this pod or listened to this pod before, you will know that I am not the biggest believer in Jalen Hurts, and I'm not one who's buying that he is the future of the Philadelphia Eagles organization. I get eye rolls from Jim. I get the whole give him a chance all the time.
Yeah, but like your argument isn't in like his talent. It's like the fact of the extreme turnover that your organization seems to have with quarterbacks if they like slip and fall once.
Defunct organization, of course. Like why would
nothing to do with the
sorry I don't have Patrick Mahomes on a 10-year fucking $450 million deal here, and I can be so proud and honored by that. We just signed Carson Wentz to this massive extension, and now he's not even a member of our organization this year. So just saying, I could get into that.
You got Flacco. He'll be all right,
That's
Super Bowl MVP.
That's right.
That's right.
So, Jim, what about you? How do you have it? I know me and you were big on, like, we were the Tua over Burrow supporters, and where do you stand now after the rookie seasons?
Yeah, so it's very hard to ignore Justin Herbert and what he did, but I'm looking at it more as like a fantasy aspect and like what Miami's going to. Miami has a lot of opportunities, man, to do some damage in this draft. So I liked what I saw from Tua in limited fashion. Remember, he wasn't really supposed to even be playing that year. So like the fact that you even seen him play was something pretty good. I liked the way he moved defenders. I liked his pocket presence. I liked that when he scrambled, he was always looking downfield, looking to complete a pass. He didn't tuck it and just look for the running lane. He was always looking for an open receiver right to the line of scrimmage. I like those aspects about Tua. I still think Tua can be the one. Mind you, he's the cheapest, which I think is fantastic right now. Miami has a lot of draft picks and a lot of weapons, can be easily sewn up and put the line. Like right now, do I think he has a true wide receiver one? No. And I argue this too. Like, yeah, his numbers looked a little bad, but like really, come on, man, who is he throwing to? I'm not like no shade on Devontae Parker, but like he was throwing to a bunch of twos, not an alpha one. So, like, you know, if they go up and get their boy Chase or they pair him back up with Smith, like, I'm pretty excited with it.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. Like, you don't think Fuller's a one, though, right? Fuller's another two, right? I mean,
he could be a 1 for 8 games.
You're right. If really he makes two.
And then, like, if the rumors are true and they're going to bang out a big name running back in the first with their other pick, like, that's a lot of help for a young quarterback. So the fact that he could be had like the cheapest, for me, it's like he's right there with Herbert. I personally prefer what I saw out of Tua more than what I saw out of Herbert. I thought Herbert had a better supporting cast, just set up better to win. So from that aspect, I still have it as Tua just slightly, and then Herbert as like my 1B, and then Burrow firmly as the third in that option. And that's nothing against, again, the talent wise of Joe Burrow. It's Cincinnati and their O-line, and like I don't see it really being sewn up. Yeah, okay, maybe if they get if they don't fuck it up and they go with Sewell, maybe then I'm looking at Burrow. But like, come on, man, they literally set that kid up to fucking get crushed, and he got crushed. Yeah, so like, they gotta do some shit there.
Well, just to kind of piggyback on that, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying. Like all three of them are pretty close, and I don't disagree with your rankings at all. I think that your good logic there. You make some solid points, and that you're hitting the nail on the head though. Which one's the cheapest? That's who I want. You're exactly right. If they're all going to have the similar ceiling, then you go after the guy that's worth the late first instead of the early first every day. Makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I would agree with Jim. I actually stand the same. I have Tua, and then I kind of have like 2A and 2B, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. For me, like if they can get Joe Burrow some protection, I'm 100%. I'll put him ahead of Herbert. But until he gets that protection that he really needs to be able to stay upright and to be able to make the plays, the fantasy relevant plays, I just can't take him off as an A and B at that 2 spot until I really see how this draft shakes out and stuff. And I mean, we talked pre-show, Andrew, about like, would it really make sense for them to go with Jamar Chase at the 5 spot, which the Eagles think that that's what's going to happen. And that's why they moved back to 12. And we both kind of are like, if you can stay on your feet to make the play, Jamar Chase is a good pick. But that's the big question mark.
But do they need it? You got Higgins and Boyd. Like you don't need it.
It'd be nice. That was another point. Yeah. That was another point. It's more of a luxury. It's a luxury, but they can't afford the luxury. That they're not a team. They're not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is no luxury.
Something else I think that gets overlooked a lot, though, is Joe Mixon was not involved in that offense a lot last year either due to injury or just not playing well or what have you. I think if you get a running game going again, that opens up the offense for the whole team gets better. And how do you get a good running game? With offensive line. It all comes back to the same answer. So as much as I would love to see Burrow to Chase again, I don't think that makes sense. I think what you need to do is shore up the line, get your running game back on track, open up the defense a little bit so that you can get all the different plays in the playbook going. I think we tend to, I don't want to say short-sighted, but a lot of us in fantasy, we want that immediate gratification where we just say a rookie quarterback and a rookie receiver who've never played together before come in during a year in COVID when they're not even able to get the field together. And then Burrow gets hurt, I think, in week 10, if I recall. So like Higgins was just getting up to speed when Burrow goes out. So I feel like this year we're going to see a lot of that and see what they can really do together. And I think the one missing link on that offense is a good line, and that solves all the problems. It fixes all the squeaky wheels. Drafting Chase fixes one wheel, and it's not that squeaky. So I don't think that makes sense for them to do. I could totally see them doing it because it's such a Bengals move. But at the same time, drafting O-line will solve the running game, solves the passing game, solves everything. So yeah, I think that's where you're going to see, in my opinion anyway, Burrow's got the biggest potential sophomore increase, let's say, right? And kind of being a second-year player because his value was really great and then took a dive. Tua was kind of all over the map, and Herbert obviously skyrocketed with rookie records. So, like, can his potential be higher? I don't think so. Burrow, I think, has the biggest chance to jump the most, which is why I still put him in that number 2 spot over Tua. But again, it's nitpicky. They're all great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of them at this point. I'll take any of them over Joe Flacco, for instance.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about the feelings on a sophomore leap. Burrow, I can definitely see. I still think it's got to be Tua. I mean, especially if the first round falls the way they do. If they walk out with Najee Harris and Jamar Chase, or even Najee Harris and Kyle Pitts, I mean, you're laughing. You're sitting there and you're laughing. Like I listened to a bunch of podcasts over the last couple of days because of doing a lot of driving for work. And man, the hype around Kyle Pitts is real as an X receiver, as a big slot, as a tight end, as a basically whatever you want, do it all type of guy. And I mean, I think if Jamar Chase goes at 5, Kyle Pitts is your next best bet because obviously you're getting weapons to surround Tua with, because unlike where the Miami Dolphins are landing currently in draft position, because they have so many first round picks, they actually can afford the luxuries. They spent a lot of money, invested in some positions, and now they got these 3 straight years of 2 first-round picks where they can afford to put those pieces in place for the going forward and to see what they can do with Tua. And I mean, you can't make excuses for Tua if you put Najee Harris and Jamar Chase for sure. Najee Harris and Kyle Pitts, pretty certain. You can't really make excuses for him, and that sophomore leap has to happen, or else there can begin that discussion that was starting to roll in at the end of the season can really start to pick up a bit more steam. What do you think, Jim, for sophomore leap?
Sophomore leap, I still think it's got to be Tua. Like I said, the kid wasn't supposed to fucking play last year. So, like, the fact that he did shows outstanding resolve, I think, from him. I got to ask you guys a question, though, like, from the Bengals standpoint. If this draft goes 4 straight quarterbacks to start, which I think there's a goddamn really good possibility it does, do the Bengals hold that 5 and try to trade back? Because like there's going to be a frenzy for that fifth quarterback.
Let me take this one. As a Bengals fan, I would love that. Okay, I've talked about this for years. I even talked about it last year when Burrow was the clear number 1, much like Trevor Lawrence is this year. And the talk was we're taking Burrow, and I was like, well, why not trade back though? Like everybody wants that. We have many holes, and the same is true now. Bengals have a lot of needs, and I think that trading back would be the smart answer, almost no matter what. Because I don't know if Sewell is really the best offensive tackle in the class anyway. Slater's right up there for me. You've got Darisaw too, or Christian Darisaw, right? So there's a bunch of guys there that can be solid offensive tackles. I don't know if we need to get Sewell at 5. I'd much rather trade back with Carolina or something and get back into that area, or like Denver at 9, I think, right? Aren't they in that top 10 too? Mm-hmm. And try to get extra picks on top of that or add something for next year. I would love that. All that said, it'll never happen. Mike Brown's not going to do it. He's too afraid of looking like an idiot. Honestly, I think that's what it comes down to. There's so much fear in the Bengals front office right now that makes it so that they're going to take the pick, they're going to take the safe way out and go, yeah, we did well. No, you missed out on value, man. What are you doing? But yeah, I would love for them to trade back. Ain't going to happen. That's just
I mean that's I felt the same way about Howie, and then when that trade came through on Friday, I was like, whoa,
you had to love that.
I was just taken aback. I was like, what's going on here? Multiple first round picks, unless he's going for Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson if things clear up. But I mean, I pray, give Jalen Hurts a chance. You guys, we're the same way as you guys right now. We have so many holes, and the trade back just made too much sense to add ammunition to go and fill those holes year over year. And I mean, obviously, I think we're beyond the retooling. We've been retooling since we won the Super Bowl. I think we're in a rebuild now, and I think that we have to accept that, and we have to know that, like, you know, when you have $40 million in dead cap, you're kind of in a rough spot, especially in a year where the cap went down. So
yeah, it's a deep draft class too. There's a lot of guys in the second and third that can really make an improvement on your team right away. So I feel like it's the perfect year to trade back. I'm not saying that for like fourth and fifth rounders are going to start. I mean, yeah, in some teams, but I mean, like if you can add a second or third, but to move back 6 spots or something, why not? Right? Like that seems like a no-brainer pick to me. So I would love to see that happen. I would like it more for the Bengals because I think they have more needs and that's my team, but I wouldn't mind it for your sense there too, Connor. I get your logic.
Yeah, so for with the deep aspect in mind, let's move into the 2021 class and talk about the quarterbacks, because this is one me and Jim have talked ad nauseum about, and we both agree there will be 3 starting in the league in about 5 years' time. Unless there's some dramatic shift when these guys get into the league and get jobs and start doing work. I think that there's 3, and I think Jim agrees there's probably 3.
Yeah, we don't agree on the 3, but yeah,
we don't. Yeah, we disagree. We disagree on the 3, but we think there's 3, and like I think that the quarterback market has been overstated this year, and that's creating this extreme balloon effect with the quarterback market and the value of the quarterback. Look at what San Francisco traded up for. They traded 3 first rounders and a third rounder to move up 9 spots. So you're essentially looking at like that balloon effect. And so with that in mind, Andrew, who do you view as your top 3 quarterbacks coming out this year?
Well, just to hit on one point I want to get into first, it's economics is what's causing this. There's a greater supply than there is a demand, right? There are 10 teams that need a starting quarterback, and there's only really 4 or 5 starting quarterbacks. In 5 years, there may only be 3. I'm with you on that. But I'm saying there are 5 that are ready to kind of get in this year. And what that does is it inflates the value massively because now you've got such a small market. You've got more teams than there are players, and therefore the demand is just through the roof right now. And that's common. That happens from time to time. But this year, because of the tier break, we were talking about this a little bit before, there are 4 or 5 solid first-round options. And then after that, it's kind of – I mean, it's Kyle Trask and a couple buddies. Like, I don't really know. But at the top, obviously, you've got Trevor Lawrence. I don't think anybody's going to debate that. He's the number 1 option in the class, and I think anybody would be happy to have him. He's, you know, the second coming of Jesus to a lot of people, or whatever. But he is a solid quarterback and will be a terrific starter. My second in the class is still Justin Fields, as crazy as that may be. I think he's not going to be the second. He might not even be the third. He might not even be the 4th taken in the draft. But I just like his overall skill set from a fantasy perspective. Obviously, not knowing landing spot changes everything, but based on pure talent, I still think Fields is my number 2. And then 3, I kind of waffle. I've really been Lance, but I think I'm going to start going Wilson. The more I see of him, the more I like. So I think that's probably where I am today, but you could ask me tomorrow and I might have a different answer. But yeah, I mean, it goes Lawrence, Fields, Wilson for today, and we'll kind of see how that goes. That's my 3 for now.
Yeah, for me, I'll just throw mine in before you go there, Jim. I got Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, I got Trey Lance. I've done a lot of reading on him. I've read some interviews. Like, this guy has a ridiculous work ethic. I think that work ethic is what's going to translate. We see some quarterbacks come in and they think, oh, yeah, I got the starting job, or the pressure of the starting job breaks them, like a Dwayne Haskins type, and situations like that come up where they're just not ready. Whereas I think Trey Lance is ready, and he's got the intangibles and some things that you can't teach. And then what you can teach, I think he'll take on really quickly and he'll take off. I mean, if you watch that guy run, I watched some game film, and I would like him to take the Josh Allen route and be smarter when running. He loves this to eat contact and keep running, but you cannot do that at the NFL level. This isn't North Dakota State anymore. These guys are big, beefy boys, and big, beefy men, and they will literally take you out, and it could be the end of your career. We could be looking at Robert Griffin again. So he has to be very careful with his running style for sure. And then I got Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields and Trey Lance, they definitely can be interchangeable. I just like what Trey Lance has. I like the intangibles that Trey Lance has. I think he has everything Fields has, with a slightly refined or very close to the same level. And whereas Justin Fields, I think, needs a little bit more development in certain areas. But I mean, but either way you go, I could definitely have him there. And I mean, mobility pays, especially in fantasy. When we're talking about fantasy football, mobility pays. And that's why I think those three are the three that I think will have jobs in 5 years, because Lance and Fields are hugely mobile, and Trevor Lawrence is apparently a generational talent that is going to supersede like Patrick Mahomes maybe. So,
but Jim disagrees.
Yeah, no. Listen, it's number one. I just want to reiterate by saying, like, it's Lawrence for sure, and then it's Fields close, but then there's a big gap between 3, 4, 5, 6, and 3, 4, 5, 6 to me could be literally a fucking dice throw on personal preference. I'm liking Lance more and more. He's up there as of right now as my 3, but like my 4 is Kyle Trask. Like, that's my 4. I like his footwork. I understand his decision making is a little to be desired, but I think that could be coached. I think again, like, I had a lot to do with feeding Kyle Pitts and getting to Pitts, but just like the overall reads. But like, then there's like I don't, because like again, like I don't really see, like, I'm not in love with Zach Wilson. I'm going to tell you right now. I don't see what Zach Wilson does any better than Mac Jones or Kyle Trask or Trey Lance. I don't. So like those are jumbled, and it's a personal preference. Today my personal preference is Trey Lance, but like I said, Kyle Trask is my 4. So
yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would agree on the Zach Wilson thing. I was listening to Greg Cassell on a podcast earlier today, and he was talking about Zach Wilson. He's like, so many people talk about what he does well, but so little look at like the Coastal Carolina game where he was under pressure. He was under extreme pressure all game, like what could happen in the NFL if he lands on the New York Jets. And it's like, he made bad decisions. He looked like a completely different quarterback. He was overwhelmed, and you should expect that from most any quarterback. But he's like, that's something to worry about at the NFL level. But everyone likes to look at the arm. Look at when he has 7 or 8 seconds in the pocket. Look at what he can do. I'm quite certain I can do that if I have 8 seconds in the pocket, and I'm 5'7" too. So I don't know. I think the hype around Wilson's a little.
Let's look at that arm though. Like even at the pro day, like I have a little bit of a problem with that. Like Justin Fields makes an incredible throw that everybody went bananas that Zach Wilson made, and Zach Wilson's was underthrown, and Justin Fields was a dime in the corner of the end zone, and nobody was going nuts for that. And they're saying, "Oh, he's inconsistent." Are you kidding me? Inconsistent? Like you can't pick one and then not say the same thing and the same problems for the other, man. So like, but I see less of it with Justin Fields. That's for damn sure. Like he makes better decisions.
I'm not sure if you were looking at a different Twitter than I was. I feel like it was blowing up all day about Fields. I mean, like I had so many people in my feed just going nuts about it. So I again, it just, maybe we follow different people, Jim. I'll come back to this for a minute. Like I said, it might be some recency bias where I've just seen more film of Wilson recently. And for me, like that arm, that arm is not something you can train or teach, right? That's just pure talent at that point. You can definitely help him with some of the scared tactics. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks, ironically enough, Darnold even seeing ghosts, right? Like there are some quarterbacks out there that just don't adapt well to pressure and then can train and learn how to do that. I think a lot of that too comes with he's not used to being the guy. Now he's going to have to be the guy. Some of that stuff, that poise, that confidence comes with the position. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that I disagree with your ranking. It's more right now I put Wilson 3, partially because a landing spot and opportunity are going to be higher, I think, than the other guys too. So you're going to get to see it quicker, which inevitably leads to fantasy points, right? Like I don't necessarily care who's going to win me the game, who's going to win me the week, but I can guarantee you the guy in the game in the NFL is going to have a better chance to score me fantasy points. So part of that comes down to it for me too. And I do think with all the talk about Wilson going 2, I'm just buying into that more, where I think the Jets are going to do that. I think they're going to build around him a little bit. They're going to play that San Francisco style offense. I'm not quite sure he's the right fit in my mind. He's a good fit. Don't get me wrong. But I just think all that smoke leads to fire for me, which has him edging out by the slimmest of margins, Trey Lance, because I do like Trey Lance. I've liked Lance for a couple, I wouldn't say years now, probably a year I've liked Trey Lance. And I do think he's a great quarterback with a lot of great talent. And I think he's one of those guys, like you said before, he's got a high floor in fantasy because he's going to run. He's not afraid to hold the ball and go. And Wilson's not quite that guy. And there are definitely question marks after the top two. I think we all kind of agree, I guess, that it's Lawrence and Fields still. But after that, you can kind of throw your hands in the air and go, I guess we'll see,
Definitely. So with that in mind, I want to move on to ranking the top 5 quarterbacks between the 2020 class and the rookie seasons that we saw and the incoming 2021 class. I know that we talked about 6, but let's narrow it down to ranking the top 5 and who you think for purely fantasy purposes. Jim, let's start out with you. How do you have it ranked?
So for fantasy purposes, I have it as, and again, it's also perceived value on where these guys are going. So like trade marketability, it goes into it for fantasy purposes. And right now it's Trevor Lawrence, because I think the 101 holds more value than any one of these other quarterbacks that you can get. So it's default, it's Trevor Lawrence as my 1. Then personal preference for me is going to go Justin Fields, then Tua, Herbert, Burrow, Lance. And it's only because Lance has the lowest upside for me out of them, because he doesn't have a landing spot yet. And like we know pretty much Lawrence is going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Fields is going to go either to the Jets or San Francisco, I would imagine. Can't see him going really past 3. If he doesn't, whatever. But and even still, he holds rookie value 102 pick in Superflex leagues. That's another thing that, as of right now, he holds still more value, even without a landing spot. And then the 3 from last year. And then, like I said, because I don't know where Lance is going to go, he's at the bottom.
Yeah, I think that would be wild, though. Like, I mean, the draft really starts at 3, I think, unless the Jets really go off the board and go offensive line and choose to stick with Darnold. But it sounds like they're going to draft a quarterback and keep Darnold around. But, I mean, that's tough to say. For me, I mean, geez, it's tough for me too. I went Trevor Lawrence, obviously that's the obvious, the 1-to-1 perceived value there. And then the value that you might see that you're going to see when he gets into Jacksonville and have all the hype around that. I have Tua number 2. I have Joe Burrow number 3. I have Herbert at 4. And then I have Lance at 5. I don't know. I guess I'm just a bit lower than you guys on the Justin Fields train. And just, I think that there's some things that need to be developed, and I just got to see his coachability and what happens. I mean, I saw a tweet today, the track record on Ohio State quarterbacks and hidden in the NFL is an atrocity, an absolute trainer. I think I sent it in the True North Fantasy Football group chat. It goes like, there's a guy with 85 touchdowns, and then it drops right into the teens, and it just goes down from there. So for me, I'm like, oof, is there something about how they're coached? Is it something about how they come into the league and get developed? Is it something like their mentality that they come in with? They went to Ohio State. It was a big school. I'm better than everything else. And they get to the NFL and they're like, holy shit, I don't know. What is this? Like, I don't know what it is. But Trey Lance, I think he already has a mindset. I mean, there was an article in The Athletic a while ago, and if you read it, it was an amazing article. He starts his day at 4 a.m. He's in the room studying tape at 6 a.m. This man is a workhorse, and he's exactly what you want in the NFL, kind of like Carson Wentz, except I'm really hoping Trey Lance's mentality and mental strength and organizational support is a lot better than what Carson Wentz got. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jim hit on something I want to cover back up on here. If you're talking pure value of like what's the most valuable in fantasy leagues, I agree that Lawrence is by far the most. At this time of year, it's only going up too, which is hard to say for the other options on this list. The 101 value is going to rise until you pick it. And to be honest, the pick is worth more than the player too. So that has a kind of has a weight on this. If we're looking at is the 101, where do I rank the 101 in startups for Superflex leagues and all quarterbacks? It's got to be at the top of the list because you can get a king's ransom for it. But if you're talking QB talent, and I know we kind of went through this before, and I don't want to keep going on it, but I do put Herbert first. He broke rookie records and he missed a game. He played with a team with a coach that didn't know how to coach. Right, like Anthony Lynn is no longer the head coach there and made terrible decisions, forcing him to put the ball in Herbert, the rookie's hands, and he did well with it. He played well under pressure. He threw all the balls he needed to throw. He had weird offense with Eckler out. I mean, there's a whole bunch of downsides to that, and he still broke rookie records. So I still put Herbert first in talent, but Lawrence is right there behind him. And I think the surrounding cast around Lawrence this year is going to be a little spottier than it was for Herbert last year. I mean, you've got Visca, you've got Chark. We were talking about Robinson before the show. Like, he's a great running back, but I don't know how much he's going to catch out of the backfield. And that, obviously, we're talking about fantasy value for the quarterback. So I just think it's, for me, I'd like the sure thing I know in Herbert. He broke records. He's probably going to do more of that in his career. I just like Herbert and then Lawrence. So the top two are real close. Then there's a tier break. For me, it still goes Burrow second. Like I said before, Burrow and Tua are real close. So those two are right there at 3 and 4. Tier break, Justin Fields. And kind of the same reason that Connor was getting on. I don't know what to make of Fields yet. I don't know what to make of really any of these rookie quarterbacks. How many times have we seen a rookie quarterback who's supposed to be amazing, Ryan Leaf, come into the league and do nothing with it, right? So, like, there are times that it happens, whether you want to admit it or not. And these guys are great talents, and they may not go to the right landing spot, right? For all we know, Fields goes forward to Atlanta and sits behind Matt Ryan for 3 years and is the next what's the guy? The guy that Miami drafted, what's the guy? I can't remember. Josh Rosen, right? One of those guys that, like, great talent, should be terrific, and just never does a damn thing with it. And I don't want to put that bad juju on anybody, but we've seen that happen. And the 3 quarterbacks from last year don't have that. They don't have that as an option. So that rises their value a little bit to me. Lawrence is about as sure thing as you can get. But then after that, I mean, I do think Fields and Lance are right there. And again, as a third tier, but right in that third group for me. So that's kind of where I put them.
I love it. Coach Craig dropping in the group, in the chat there, Jamarcus Russell. Yeah, there's a long list, and I think that the list is only going to get longer this year. I think
we
there's going
always
to be
forget
some
the
that
bad
fail.
ones. Honestly, we all forget our bad takes. We move on, and we love the good ones. And I just think sometimes this time of year, it's tough to realize, like, not all 5 of these quarterbacks could all fail. Honestly, we don't know. Yeah. There's so many uncertainties. We don't even know landing spots. Talk to me in June, and I'll have a much better idea. Right?
I think if Trevor Lawrence fails, that would be one of the biggest ones of the day, one of the biggest failures in my lifetime. From fantasy football and professional NFL football stands.
If Trevor Lawrence fails, everybody failed. Right? Everybody failed.
Yep. No, not everybody failed. Everyone's gonna blame it on COVID. Well, I didn't get to see the combine. What about the combine? that extra 1/10 of a millisecond that the laser timer would have put on the 40 was the difference.
Well, he could also go the route of Andrew Luck and play for 3 years and then opt out because he's getting his head rocked around because that team's not terrific and they don't have a line. We don't know. And there's so many different variables in this that makes it really tough to project. And yet here we are, all of us trying to project, right? That's all we try to do is pick the best. And the best thing you can do is just look at the data you have and make the most informed decision. So I totally get the logic. I'm not saying he's going to flop. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm just saying that there is a chance that these quarterbacks have a lot put on their shoulders and a big transition comes during a time when there's a lot going on and they just don't succeed like we want them to. It happens. That's all.
No, I agree. And you know what? I actually like, okay. So the only reason Greg Cosell was on a radio interview live right after I listened to a podcast. So I got like 45 minutes straight of this guy. And he said he doesn't rank. He will not rank people. He looks at it based purely on translatable skills to the NFL level. He thinks that's the best way to do it. He thinks, why rank people? It's never right. As soon as the landing spot comes, everybody's rankings do a complete backflip. And it's like, exactly, these are the rankings I actually meant. It's like, no, it's what's going to translate to the NFL. What do you know is going to translate to the NFL, and how do you know they're going to succeed? It's all those skills that are going to translate, not how somebody ranks them or how somebody feels they should be ranked or where they should be positioned. So that's it's interesting, the quarterback position for sure.
I'll piggyback on that and say that the only thing I know for sure is that my rankings are wrong. Guaranteed. No matter what I do, no matter how much effort we put in, that is not how they finish. I've never been correct 100% on any of my rankings ever. It's like
One
playing
of
the lottery.
the-
It's just not
One
going to
of
happen.
the most courageous people I've ever heard to actually admit that the rankings are going to be wrong.
I tell people all the time, like right now I feel XYZ. Ask me tomorrow. I said it earlier, right? Where it's like literally like there's so much new data coming in. I can only do with what I can. And honestly, the rankings today, you hit the nail on the head. The rankings today will change between now and May, and they'll change between May and August, and they'll change between August and November. Do you remember when Lamar Jackson was QB1 overall? Do you remember that? That wasn't that long ago. Right? That wasn't that long. Yeah, I know you do. But that wasn't that long ago, right? That was such a sure thing. Everybody knew it going into last year. We're taking him over P. Mahomes. He's 101 in Superflex startups. Maybe not. And that was 2 months.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's all it took. So, like, the world changes. Opportunities change so quick. It's so hard to project where things go. Dak above Herbert all last year until Dak went out and Herbert blew up. And now everybody's like, Herbert over Dak. I mean, like, it took 3 months. That's all it takes. You know what I mean? Like, so it's nuts to me how we try to predict what the future holds. And if we could, we wouldn't be doing this. We'd be millionaires playing the lottery. So we're just doing our best with what we have. So I never try to claim that I'm always right. I just try to say I'm logical, I'm rational, I do the best I can. That's all I can do.
Love it. That great 35 minutes on the quarterback position. So this should be fun getting into
On
the
pace.
running backs and the wide receivers. Yes, we're on pace for a good show.
Yeah.
Before we move into the running back position, quick shout out to Viridian Global, supporting us with the gear that the podcasters wear. Jim is his bankroll is with Viridian Global. He's rocking the gear all the time. So
And this guy did. Point after. Catch him on Fridays.
So shout out to Viridian Global. Shout out to the point after at Viridian Global on Twitter and ViridianGlobal.com to see all the gear, the Fantasy Football Collective, and so much more. Now let's move right into running backs. As we all know, the most important position in football, and as we all know, the rookie's probably one of the most important times to get your hands on one of these running backs. So let's jump right into it. Last year's running back class was a monster running back class, same with the wide receiver class. So this should be really interesting to see where we have them ranked when we put 2021 and 2020 together. So Andrew, who do you got as your top 5? I know it'll be tough, but let's keep it to top 5 running backs of 2020.
Well, with what we know now, right, looking at the data that we have after a full year of work, Jonathan Taylor has got to be number 1. I don't think there shouldn't be much debate about that, but I'll be curious to hear your guys' opinions. After that, I would say there's a tier break. I always like to do tiers. After that, I got to put Swift ahead of Dobbins, but those two are right there for me just because of their opportunities, kind of in flux a little bit each. Then I got Akers. I do like Akers a lot, and I really do think that he's got the talent and the opportunity now to be a stud with Stafford in LA. I think that's going to be good. And honestly, I don't like doing this, but it's got to be Clyde because after that, are there even any starters left? Like Zach Moss isn't a starter. AJ Dillon's not a starter. I'm worried.
Antonio Gibson.
Okay, never mind. Antonio Gibson, totally forgot. I keep thinking of him as a receiver in my head. It's like something I've noticed about myself because I just don't think of him as a running back. But yes, Antonio Gibson, and I would put him at 5, and it begrudgingly because, again, I think he's probably better than that. But I do like Cam Akers a little more than Gibson. So apologies. Thank you for the catch. Yes, no, it's definitely Gibson at 5.
Yeah, you're so welcome. But yeah, we forget about that because he did do a lot of receiving work. He's probably one of the best receiving backs, if not the best receiving back out of this class, the 2020 class. Jim, who do you got for your top 5 running backs?
So, like, just to start off here, like any other starting running backs, you didn't even name like the best one that's out right now, and that's James Robinson.
Okay, no,
James
I'm
Robinson.
sorry. I know we talked about him before, and he's terrific, but he's not in my top 7-ish. I mean, I totally forgot about Gibson. So yeah, here's why. I'll jump on this for a second. I do like Robinson, and we were just talking about him. He's a guy that you can get. I don't know about his longevity. The team doesn't have control over him for that long because he's an undrafted free agent. He's also on a nothing contract, which means he's going to try to get money quicker. That team could move on from him and not even notice. So his opportunity is the most in flux, in my opinion. Talent-wise, he's up there, and we talked about his opportunities, target share, all this. But when you don't have like an actual draft pick with this guy, the team didn't think much of him. Yes, they got a good steal on him, but they're not tied to him. Like, and rational GMing doesn't happen, right? GMs do this all the time where they do things that are stupid and don't make sense. So I think it's easily like I like him a lot this year and maybe the year after, but I don't put him in my top 5 in Dynasty. I'm sorry, it doesn't happen yet. Go ahead though, Jim.
Well-
Tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay, so running backs, like, really, I'm only looking for like 3 years of productivity. So last year, this year, next year, perfect. I'm out. I'll sell them.
Sure.
I'll move on, move up. You're talking about opportunity, and like you're putting a guy like J.K. Dobbins, who I love, talent-wise. I was on record saying, out of the big three, you're going to look back. It's going to be like CMC, where everyone had him as the RB3, but talent-wise, he's going to be the RB1. Situation-wise, though, I don't know about it in Baltimore. I've had a lot of discussions with TNF Tyrell, and he's pointed out the rushing opportunity share being capped, especially with Lamar Jackson, even though he is in the possible best offense he could be, where they run the RPO. That's where he had the most success at Ohio State. But just for pure opportunity share, we were talking about this before, like, even if you knocked out 15% of the opportunity share for James Robinson, he's still top 10. Still a top 10.
Yeah.
So, like,
that's true.
For me, yeah, I agree with you. It's Jonathan Taylor. He is the one of whatever on the. I'm kidding. James Robinson being the one, but it is Jonathan Taylor. But then it's James Robinson for me for 2. DeAndre Swift is 3. Again, because of opportunity share. Then it's Gibson and Akers. And I really like Cam Akers. I really like Cam Akers, but they also kind of liked Henderson, and they also liked Malcolm Brown. And like, those are guys that can actually do some damage to Akers' fantasy workload, where I don't really see a big threat from 29 catch JD McKissick or 29 target JD McKissick.
Yeah.
So
that was a hell of a game.
Yeah, the opportunity share for me, and again, it's a driving force for me, leads me to Gibson over Akers.
Love it.
I get the logic. Yeah.
For me, I actually have DeAndre Swift at 1, and I look at this year, and I also look to the future. I think he's going to be a PPR monster. I mean, as we stand and look at that roster right now, like, their wide receiving room is decimated. They got TJ Hawkinson, they got DeAndre Swift. So I'm kind of looking with that mindset at this past year and what we saw as the year ramped up with DeAndre Swift. And I mean, I think we can kind of attribute that to the fact that there was no preseason and stuff. That ramp up took a little bit of time. And I think he was coming off an injury, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Jonathan Taylor, number 2 for me. And another thing that dropped Taylor for me, Wilkins is there, Hines is there, Mack is there. They're all going to have a piece of the pie, whether we like it or not. As much as people want to make you believe James Robinson's going from an 85% opportunity share to a 25%, if there's anyone's opportunity share that's at risk, it's got to be Jonathan Taylor, who only had a 52% opportunity share in the first place with a Marlon Mack who was out with an Achilles injury. So as soon as we bring this into play, I feel like that opportunity share, it's at risk, even if each of them take 10% or each of them take 15% or they split in some form or fashion. Like John, like, it's just the way that he runs that offense in Indianapolis. And it's something that I worry about. James Robinson for me is next up. I got him at 3. I love James Robinson. I get the point, Andrew, and I respect the point because I can see it as well. He could go and get paid and then that could be completely done. But that's the same in agreement with Jim on that point, that you take him for the 3 years, the 4 years, and then you get out as quick as you can so that you're not like a Todd Gurley or David Johnson owner right now who has no way out but the waiver wire at this point. And then I got Dobbins at 4, and Dobbins for me, when you have a quarterback rushing for 1,000 yards, that hurts. That hurts as a running back. And that is my issue with J.K. Dobbins. If he had have landed in almost any other landing spot with a quarterback who was rushing for 300 or 400 yards, I think Dobbins would be probably at the top of my list because he is a monster, an absolute monster, PPR monster, an absolute monster in yards per carry, yards per reception, everything. He's just a big play waiting to happen all the time. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire for me is 5. He was my 1 last year. I never predicted the landing spot of Kansas City. But it was a luxury. Like we said pre-show, it was a luxury for them to get that running back and to get that support for Mahomes in the backfield. So it's a shame, but you're attached to the hip of a guy who loves to throw a football, and he's got 2 of the best guys catching it in Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So that's how I got the 2020 top 5.
I don't hate it. Yeah, and I will say this. I understand the Dobbins fade. I get it, right? Where he didn't show up as much as you thought he would last year. But again, a lot of the rookies, we see this every year with rookies. They take a few games to get up to speed. I know it's an excuse that everybody uses, but literally last year didn't have an offseason. It was really odd. Rookies especially were put behind the 8 ball. Gus Edwards had more carries than J.K. Dobbins. Do we really see that happening again this year? I don't. Right. Honestly, I think Dobbins took over and dominated well enough at the end of that year. That team wants to run the ball. They just went and got Sammy Watkins, so they're not going to be throwing it. Let's be honest. Like, that's not the kind of guy you get if you're going to be passing the ball. That's a slot filler. They just put him on the field and let him run around. I honestly, I think that team's going to run a lot more, and that's why I like his future. To go back to Jim's point too, though, I mean, you're right about the 3-year window, and I totally agree with your logic there. I'm not saying that Taylor is going to be the number one guy for 7 years. I think that he's got a better chance at a solid 3 years. There is still, I mean, I think we can all agree are the Indianapolis Colts going to draft a running back this year? Hell no. Honestly, is Robinson going to have a starting job? Are the Jacksonville Jaguars going to draft a running back? I can't say hell no. I just can't.
Ooh, I think they draft a running back, but they draft like a third down running back, like Chuba Hubbard style.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree with that, but I'm saying, like, we know the situation in Indianapolis is staying the way it's going to be, even with Mack on the Achilles coming back. I'm not afraid of Mack. Yes, Wilkins. Yes, I guess Hines is a pass catcher guy, but like Taylor blew up. We all saw that in fantasy, especially. And Taylor and Robinson have very similar yards per carry and very similar attempts, very similar fantasy points per games and all this. Taylor had more touchdowns, if I recall. So in some leagues, too, it kind of matters if you're doing PPR and all this. I'm not so certain about, I guess. Let me put it this way. The range of outcomes for Robinson is wider than the range of outcomes for Taylor. If I'm drafting a guy in the first round in Dynasty, I want someone with a very narrow window with a high range, right? For me, that's Taylor. That's why he's up there. Robinson is the same ceiling, but his floor is lower. That range scares me, and I just would rather have these other guys with higher floors, especially with running backs. And the way I build my teams is I try to have a little bit of a mix. You got to put a little risk in there. You got to add a little bit of flavor, a little bit of seasonings here and there. But for me, my RB1 needs to have a high floor and a high ceiling. And I'm not sold on Robinson having that. Yes, you're right about target opportunity, but there's so many other question marks with him that those other guys I mentioned just don't have. That's all it is.
Definitely, I can see that,
Good
and
points.
I can respect that. They're definitely better points than some of the people who made points on Twitter about James Robinson. So I can respect.
No, I'm not hating on Robinson. No, I respect
respect
the hell out of the guy. It's just there's so much off the field
Should have
stuff
been in
you
your
have
top
to take
five.
with him.
Just
You know what?
kidding,
Give me
man.
another year and he'll be in there. Give me another year,
I'm
I'll be
just-
sold. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm just busting chops.
I don't blame
Perfect.
you.
So for 2021, we'll do our top 5. I'll run through mine quick. I think it's going to be the top 3, no brainer, interchangeable, but it's a massive, like the biggest tier break of all time between the top 3 and then 4, 5, 6, all the rest of them. For me, I got Najee Harris. Harris is just all around, just a monster, man. He's like Derrick Henry, but he can catch football or can be more involved in the passing game. For me, Travis Etienne, number 2, because if you're in a PPR league, he can be a monster for you if he's making plays in the landing spot. And then Javonte Williams at 3 for me. I like Williams, but I think Williams is landing spot dependent too. Like if he lands in Atlanta, wheels up, baby, let's go. If he lands in, me and Andrew were talking pre-show, if he lands in Tampa Bay, hold the phone a little bit. Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette are free agents next year, but you may have to wait a year or 2 on that
Or like
one.
Green Bay, another Bay, right? If he lands in Green Bay, ugh.
Oh yeah, ew, definitely
Yeah.
ew on that one. And then for me, the massive tier break, and then when you're done drinking your coffee, we come to 4, Michael Carter for me, because I think he can be a huge change of pace guy and great guy for PPR. And then I got Kylan Hill. I'm big on Kylan Hill. I love Kylan Hill. I think if he gets the right line, let's say Atlanta, let's say Pittsburgh, he can he can take off. I can guarantee, because he can do a little bit of everything. Like I said, we talked about him last week with Damian. I don't love his vision. That man, he is a violent runner, and he runs, and he will run through the back ass of that offensive line and push it as far as he can, if that's the hole that he thought he had. But I mean, if he gets holes and if he finds the right holes and he cleans up that vision, I think he can be really, really good. But the tier break is massive between 3 and 4. So that I will not deny that.
No,
So
that's fair.
Andrew, what do you got?
Well, mine's pretty similar. I do think that there is a couple of big tier gaps where you can grab some coffee. I think that was a good way to put it. I think it's Harris at the top, ETN second. You hit the nail on the head. Williams third. Again, without knowing landing spots, it's kind of just speculative on who's going to be above who afterwards. I mean, those three are pretty close to me. Williams has been rising for me a lot lately too. The more film I see on him, the more, I guess, patience maybe is a word, where he just seems to find the hole a little better on the outside. It's nitpicky. After that, you grab your coffee, you go take a break, you walk around the block, you come back and say, who's still left? And then you got, I think, Gainwell, I think is number 4, mainly because I play in a lot of PPR leagues. I think he's going to be a PPR monster. I think he's similar to Carter in a way. One of those guys that you can maybe get if you're in the right draft, you can fall to the second round and you're ecstatic about it. But then, yeah, my number 5 is just like yours, Kylan Hill. I mean, I'm a big fan of Kylan Hill. He only played in 3 games this year because he sat out for a couple of reasons technically. But I think that there's a lot of potential with him. And I think if he gets in the right spot, you nailed my favorite one there, Pittsburgh. I'm telling you what, man, if he lands on something like that, where with a team that wants to run the ball a lot, Hill could be an easy top 10 running back in a couple of years. He could show up and show out, and we could all be talking about this. He's got that high ceiling. He does have a low floor. Yeah, he is one of those guys that could go to the wrong landing spot and we never talk about him. And he never does anything with it. So for now, I hate drafting at this time of year, or I hate putting rankings together at this time of year because there's so much speculation. But yeah, I think that would probably be mine. It would be Harris, Etienne, Williams, big gap, Gainwell, and Hill. That's the way I list it.
Yeah, and Gainwell, Damien spent probably half an hour of the show coming back on Gainwell last week to try and convince me and Jim. So we're you know what, I can see the opportunity, I can see the potential. There's some people who talk him up, and then there's some people who don't. So I mean, for me, it's a toss-up. It's a landing spot thing, and I know that it's a cop-out to say landing spot dependent.
Oh,
but I think this year more than ever you use it because it's true. There isn't that many open RB1 jobs, especially from a fantasy perspective, that you can sit there and say, oh, yeah, if he goes there as a 2, he can definitely have fantasy potential. I don't see it.
What if Gainwell goes to Jacksonville?
Oh, don't say that.
I'm being honest.
I think we had that speculation.
Well, they need a pass catching back, right? That would be good. That would help out. That would help Trevor Lawrence, which we were talking about before. What would that? And I mean, let's toss it to Jim. You have to give your rankings anyway. But before you do, what do you think about Gainwell in Jacksonville? Does that make any sense? Do you hate that? What?
I don't think the Capitals needed to be spent on Gainwell for Jacksonville. That's the difference.
Sure.
I think he'll be gone when it's their time to start picking running backs. But
I think
if he somehow falls, then you got to take it. But
he's a 3rd rounder in my book.
Yeah, he's a 3rd rounder. I think they could end up landing him at the top of the 3rd round if they want to go RB there.
Or he could fall to the 4th. We see that too, right? It happens. Chuba Hubbard could be a guy that goes there. I mean, pick any of those 3rd, 4th, 5th, that second day running back guy that goes and fills in that gap. It hurts Robinson, I think. That's all.
See, I think they're going to go Chuba. That's the running back I think they're going to go. That if he falls to him, like I said, I think they're going to go 4th or 5th round. Yeah, I think he drops because he's a guy that should have came out last year. But
would that help him, or would that make Chuba an RB2 worthy or flex worthy option in fantasy?
I think if Chuba goes there, you start buying the dip on James Robinson.
That's a fair way to put it.
Immediately.
That's a fair way to put it.
Because I don't think he's
You're not worried.
a viable threat. No, I'm not. I think the touchdown share is going to be there. I think I've talked about it before. Even if he loses, because the theory is that he's going to have a counter running mate, so he's going to lose touches. Okay, but he's going to lose touches, but they should be a more positive game script. And more positive game script means they're going to run the ball more, and more running of the ball means more that touchdowns. Even if he does, yes, and if he has a lower, say, snap or a lower market percentage, it could still read it out to maybe 20 carries less than he had last year, or around the same amount of carries he had anyway. I could still see him hitting 1,000 yards rushing, 7 rushing touchdowns. I think he had 250 yards pass or receiving, and 3 receiving touchdowns.
That's the ceiling. I agree. That's exactly. I agree with you. But isn't his floor also significantly lower if they add somebody else? Doesn't his risk profile go up as a player, James Robinson?
I agree with you, and that's why I never really looked at it as you are. And I loved how you stated it. How you said in the first round you're looking for a guy with the least amount of fluctuation in his profile. You're right. It is Jonathan Taylor over James Robinson. If they do draft a guy like Chuba Hubbard, they draft a guy like Kenny Gainwell, I'm scared. But if they draft Chuba Hubbard, buy the dip.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I'm just checking with you. But no, you can get into your list. I just thought it was an interesting thought experiment we should look at there.
Oh, absolutely. So from a talent wise, yeah, Kenny Gainwell's definitely in there. Najee's been my one. He's been my one for forever. Javonte Williams is my two. It's splitting hairs, his personal preference. I like the way he finishes his runs. I like his little, someone's pointed out to me. He does this little hop skip when he's getting tackled, which is like really good. It saves, if he's getting tackled, it actually, somebody pointed out, it saves a lot of injuries to the ankles and the MCL, the knees, when he's falling down. He always falls forward.
Yeah. I love that about that kid. Yeah.
Travis Etienne's 3. He's got good breakaway speed. Let's not sugarcoat it. Like I've gotten arguments with people who are like, his stats could be better. Yeah, they could have been better if he played in the fourth quarter. They pulled him in the fourth quarter because they were crushing teams.
Yeah.
He could have easily crushed more stats. So I don't hold that against him. I do like Kenny Gainwell, but I don't, and I said this last week, I don't think there's many teams in the NFL where he could land with, one, the opportunity, and two, the coaching that I think would use him in the right way. He's still 4. The guy that I'm really, really loving this draft from a talent standpoint, and you can get him, this is the best, you can get him in like the 3rd round, easy rookie drafts. A lot of injury history behind him and a lot of injury concerns behind him, but he can overtake veterans very easily. It's Trey fucking Sermon. And that's a dude you can get, like, again, 3rd round of your rookie drafts, man. Like, you're not spending any capital if he hits, which is crazy. And he could be.
Yeah, I got Sermon at like probably 6 for me. Like when I watch tape, I love his vision. His football IQ is great. He's a violent runner, but a violent runner with a history of injuries, the tendency to get injured, which is what scares me. If his run style led to more of like, a zone scheme where he's going outside, he's avoiding the heavy hits, he's avoiding the pile up, then I'm like, okay. But I mean, I loved his run style. Like in the game film that I did watch, so nice to watch, so refined, such a good running back. But the injury history has me petrified of it. But like you said, if you're getting him in the 3rd round, you can stash him on your taxi squad, or you can kind of wait a couple years and see the injury history out, see everything out. And worst comes to worst, he just ends up dropping off the face of the earth, and you let him off your taxi squad to the waiver wire, and people probably won't even notice. But like, he's someone you can kind of wait on. And like you said, he could overtake somebody if the right job's there for the taking. Like maybe say, I mean, the destination sucks, but Houston, you could go in there and you could overtake David Johnson. Trey Sermon, I could see that. That fits. That works.
Yep, I agree. And he's definitely got some of the talent, but again, he's got a lot of question marks, which is why he falls in drafts. I've seen him go in some mocks that I've done in the 1st round. So there are some people that are high on him, that like him a lot and are willing to reach. I mean, again, at this time of year, you're going to have that, right? You're going to have people putting their flag on things, and it changes everything. But when we get landing spots, a lot of that will sift out, and you'll start to see, Sermon went to the Jets. Okay, he's really high. We're going to have him in the 1st. Or Sermon went to the Giants, playing behind Barkley. Like, well, and he's a 3rd or 4th round guy, right? So like that's just how it is for a guy like that.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So now let's just get to our top 10 running backs between the 2 classes. I'll run through mine really quick with no explanation, but the fact that I did already drop the explanation, the huge tier gap in 2021 leads to some guys I didn't even list in 2020 making my top 10. DeAndre Swift for me is number 1, Najee Harris 2, Jonathan Taylor 3. I still got James Robinson at 4, Travis Etienne at 5, Dobbins at 6, Javonte Williams at 7, Clyde at 8, Antonio Gibson 9, and Cam Akers at 10. Is how my top 10 fall, because that tier gap's just way too massive in 2021. Your actual fantasy relevant players, the gap is massive. You're throwing darts at anyone after those first 3. Andrew, what do you got?
I completely agree. And without knowing landing spots, it's tough to put any of those other guys up into that first tier. So mine's kind of the same list. And I'll be honest, Jim, you have kind of convinced me a little on Robinson. I should put him up higher than Clyde. So here's where I'm going. This is the best I can do for now. All right. So I got Taylor 1 still. I can't get rid of Taylor. Swift is right there. And I love Taylor Swift. So this is perfect. So Taylor, Swift, Dobbins. I still think I go Akers over Harris, but that's where it gets murky. And then Harris probably slots in there ahead of Gibson and then Robinson, right? So I'm looking at Robinson as my 6th, I think, in that case. CEH at 7. No, that's not right. Akers is 5. Harris is 6. Gibson 7. Robinson 8. Let's do it that way. CEH 9, and then Williams at 10. And the reason I put Williams in at 10 is more for hope than anything else. I love his upside. I love Williams as a player. I think he's got some stuff. I think I'm going to start putting him over ETN too. I just feel like that just makes more sense. So he's my 10, and it's mostly, like you just said, Connor, guys from last year, because I just know where they are.
And what about you, Jim?
So for all the rookies in 2020 and then the 5 in 2021, I would go Taylor. I would go Robinson. I would go Swift. I would go Najee Harris on the presumption that if I already drafted, he holds more value than the rest. And then I would also hold that same thing for Travis Etienne. I'm assuming we've already drafted and these guys are on my roster. So I can trade them right now without knowing spots.
Yep.
Etienne, because he has more value. And then, so I'm at what, 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I would go Gibson, Akers, 6, 7. Williams at 8. J.K. Dobbins, I'd actually slot in at 9 because I like his talent. And then, man, who? You know what? Give me CEH. I'd put him that's how low really I am on these rookie running backs. And this, Connor, you pointed out a lot leading up in previous pods. This pod, job opportunities are not as abundant as people think they are for fantasy purposes. Like apparently, people think there's like 20 RB1 jobs up for grabs here. There's not. There's definitely not. So like the 2020 class reigns supreme. They have jobs. Most of them seem secure, right? So.
Yeah, like for me, it's like look at the 2020 overall. Your RB 1 through 24. Now tell me who you take out of those to fit in your 5 or your 6 guys from this class. You're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to put most of these guys in over Kamara, over Zeke, over some of the guys we just named, Taylor, Swift, Dobbins, CEH. Like, you're just not going to be able to do it. And that's the drill that people have to take. Even when we get into the wide receivers, I can't wait to get into the wide receivers too, because that's the same thing. It's like, oh my God, it's such a great class. Where's the jobs? Where's the opportunities? Look at the top 24. Who's coming out? Why are they coming out? Why is Rondale Moore better than who Curtis Samuel would be the wide receiver 24 cutoff? What makes Rondale Moore over Curtis Samuel? Like that's the type of thing you have to put that practice in. Like, don't just sit there and make a list and say, oh yeah, I got these 5 guys as wide receiver 1s. Okay, well the wide receiver 1 is 12 people. So which 5 are you taking out, and which 7 are you leaving in?
Yeah, we've all heard those people that have 20 wide receiver 1s, and you're like, that doesn't line up, man. Are you in a big league? What are you talking about? Like that's, but we all are kind of guilty of it too. When somebody's online and they're like, oh, CeeDee Lamb is a wide receiver 1. Tell me I'm wrong. And you're like, I can't, right? But then at the same time, if I were to list 12 guys, I could probably list 12 guys ahead of Lamb if you wanted me to. But like I said before, like rankings are kind of ridiculous in that way because it's like that's why I like tiers. I'm much, much better with tiers because some of these guys are kind of fluid. And I think there really are, it could be a tier of 20 players that you think are all wide receiver 1 options, which is great, right? That's a little easier to justify, but you're right. There is only 12 spots in the wide receiver 1 in general category. And you got to move somebody down and move somebody up. And that's not that easy. That's why rankings are tough.
Agreed. And that's why I kind of like to speak of it in terms of who's going to translate to the NFL and who's going to be a good NFL player and who's going to be a fantasy player, because there's a massive difference. A guy like Cole Beasley is not the world's most attractive fantasy candidate, but he is a great football player, really good slot receiver, always finds a job, always lands on his feet no matter what happens. CeeDee Lamb is a fantasy asset and a good football player. So like you got to figure out, like if even if you don't want to rank, look at it and say, what are they going to bring to the NFL? You know, and that's so let's with that, a quick ad read for Monkey Knife Fight, and then we'll jump into the wide receivers as we're now an hour deep here. But
if you want the best DFS player prop games in the industry, jump onto Monkey Knife Fight. Monkey Knife Fight is sweeping the nation right now, and we at True North are proud to be doing it along with them. They've got games for all sports and skill levels that are sure to keep you on the edge of your seat, with endless opportunity to watch your winnings pile up. With our promo code TNFF, Monkey Knife Fight will match your first deposit up to $50. So sign up now with our promo code and you can get up to $50 of free money to start making some bank. Again, that's monkeyknifefight.com, and the promo code is TNFF at your first deposit to start playing today.
all right, so into the wide receivers we go. So Jim, we'll start off with you. 2020 top 5.
Yeah, so it's still CeeDee Lamb for me. Very, very close. I know Justin Jefferson is probably everyone's wide receiver 1. He's still my wide receiver 2. I had him there before it was cool. But it's Lamb, it's Lamb, it's Justin Jefferson. Then it's T. Higgins, Jerry Jeudy, and Denzel Mims for me that rounded off. Those are my top 5.
Perfect. For me, I got CeeDee Lamb, I got Justin Jefferson, I got T. Higgins, and that's a massive asterisk because if Jamar Chase, the alpha dog, goes there, T. Higgins drops out of this list like fast, like he's on a one-way train out of this list. And then I got Claypool and Jerry Jeudy. Wrap up my 4 and 5. What about you, Andrew?
All right. Well, I have Jefferson and Lamb. Like you hit the nail on the head there, Jim. They're right there. I mean, you can kind of flip-flop those. You know, ask me on a different day, I'll flip them. But it's Jefferson, Lamb for me. Higgins third. I think I honestly, I don't like that I do this, but I do like Ayuk a lot. And I do think he's one of those guys in fantasy that he's a PPR stud. He's going to get a lot of play. I worry about him as an actual NFL player. And with Debo coming back, I'm not sure. But as a rookie last year, I really like what I saw and his future potential. So I'm going to put Ayuk 4 and then Jeudy 5. But even then, I'm not 100% sold on that list. Like I could change that around tomorrow and feel entirely happy about it too.
Yeah, I mean,
Debo's the one that gives you pause for Ayuk?
Well, Debo partially, yeah, Kittle too. I mean, obviously, like there's a lot of offense coming back to that team, and it worries me. Like I'm not sure Ayuk's going to be the wide receiver 1. He saw a lot of attention this year as kind of their only real target, and I'm not sure that all comes back. But it's hard to walk away from someone who's doing it too. So like I don't know. That's why I'm on the fence with him.
I actually wrote in a piece about dynasty sells, and that Ayuk was my sell because when you look at the splits of. So when Debo and Kittle are in the lineup with Ayuk, yep. Ayuk's numbers aren't that bad. When Kittle is in the lineup and Debo is out, Ayuk produces about half the numbers across the board. So like Kittle is a massive, massive threat. And I just think there's a lot of people who don't realize the true threat that he is versus anybody else on that roster. But I mean, I think with Kendrick Bourne out, I know he didn't take a lot of targets or a lot of work, but I do think that bodes well if you take a guy who got on average, say 4 targets a game. Those extra targets are necessary for Debo and Ayuk to stand out and get a little bit more love when they know, Kittle's going to get 8 to 10 a game probably.
Well, I just think Debo and Ayuk are the same position. That's what makes me so worried is that Kittle's a whole different beast. He's ahead of both of them. But, I mean, Debo could be that Ayuk guy from last year and just take all those carries and whatever we call all those touches away because they just manufacture touches for the guy. And Ayuk is back to being the 3rd, if not 4th option if you count the running backs, whoever they are. I mean, that offense is just – it's scary to me. I will say this too, though. You hit the nail on the head for me again there, Connor. I orphan in January, and Ayuk was the first person I traded away. I'm like, nope, let me get better value. You know what I mean? Like I'll take rookie picks and somebody else. And I don't remember the deal now because I made a dozen trades since, but I remember thinking, nope, he's off my team. So I don't have Ayuk on any of my teams right now, just because I'm with you. I just don't trust it. But looking at rookies, it's hard not to put him there. He did perform, and so I don't know. He's ahead of Judy, who didn't do much, and even then, some of the other rookies like Mims didn't really do much. He's got a lot of future potential, but I tend to put more stock in what I've seen than what could be, just because we've all had hopes that got dashed. So. Yeah, it's close.
And I think
that's
like
why he's there.
Ayuk's someone I'd rather be wrong on. Like I'd rather pull the trigger on a trade and be like, oh wow, I messed up. But now the waters are getting even muddier with the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
And then with Kittle healthy and Samuel healthy. And will they add in another yards after the catch wide receiver? Who knows? Like you just don't know in with the San Francisco 49ers and what
there's that risk window again, right? It's like, ugh, Ayuk's got a low floor. That worries me.
Agreed on that. For 2021, I'll run through mine quickly. I got Jamar Chase. I think he's the alpha of this class. He's a complete dog. Devontae Smith at 2. Rashad Bateman's close. Like, this is a 2A, 2B situation, landing spot dependent, because I think Rashad Bateman is very similar to Jamar Chase. He can be a dog. He can demand those 8 to 10 targets. And then I got Tylan Wallace at 4. I know Jim's going to love that. And then I got Jalen Waddle at 5. Jim, how do you got it?
Everybody knows it's Jamar Chase, right? Like everybody and their mother. Me, it's Bateman as 2. Smith is 3. Tylan Wallace is not there in my top 5. You don't have to take him as the wide receiver 4. That's for damn sure. But he's creeping up my boards. I love the guy. He produced with DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Dawson Knox, returns punts, kicks, you name it. It's Elijah Moore as my number 4. And then, for me, for 5, man, it's like any given day you ask me, it's going to flip, it's going to flop. Today, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like that. I like that kid, man. I think he's going to be – it could be a thing, though, like Connor's been saying, he's might be better for an NFL team than a fantasy team. We're going to find out, though. That's for sure.
Agreed. I love Elijah Moore, too. Like, it's hard to leave him off the list. I just think that, I know that I've defended him in a lot of group chats, but at the end of the day, he is likely a slot receiver. He is likely a guy, but he's a strong slot receiver. He's like a Julian Edelman. He's strong in the middle of the field. He's like an ox in the middle of the field when there's contact and when there's crossing routes, he can get away from his defender and stuff. He's really good at that. And that's what's going to set him apart from other guys like Rondale Moore, who when he runs into a mess, he's going to get his ass knocked down by the 250-pound linebacker who crosses with him and stuff. Like, I'm just not sold on like Rondale Moore. I think you have to manufacture touches a lot for Rondale Moore, but I love Elijah Moore. It was hard to leave him off my top 5, if I'm being honest. What about you, Andrew? Go ahead, Jim.
Sorry, I just want to, like, everywhere I go, people are like knocking the slot receiver. Why, if it's a PPR league and he goes to a team that has a lot of volume? Like, were you shitting on Jamison Crowder when he was with the Washington Redskins? No, because he got a lot of he got a lot of opportunities. Julian Edelman, you named it. He got a lot of opportunities. Like, just being a slot receiver, like, yeah, the big play might not be there. You might not get the 70-yard touchdown all the time with a bomb-ass play. If you get it, it's because you broke a lot of tackles off a 15-yard pass or a 10-yard pass, and then you did the rest of the damage yourself. But, like, if you're going to go to a team that has a lot of volume, who cares if you're in the slot? You know what? Give me the slot with a lower yards per catch if it's a PPR. Give me more catches on that guy getting to the end zone. Give me 6 on a goddamn drive.
Yeah, you said Crowder in Washington. Think about Crowder in New York, man.
I didn't want to say that because it was Gase, and I was like,
yeah, but it is, and I know in memoriam of Adam Gase, but I mean, like, honestly, like, he was a monster. Like, Darnold loved him, and I think even with Gase or without Gase, Darnold would pepper Crowder with targets. Just pepper him because he trusts him. He has faith with him. If you can be a trusted slot receiver, that's why I like Elijah Moore. he can be tough. He can be that guy in the slot who truly works like a slot receiver. And you know me, Jim, we talk about all the time. I love yards after the catch. I think it's a humongous indicator of a good value in fantasy, especially in PPR. So, I mean, I'm not knocking the slot receiver big time. I'm knocking certain 5'7", 170-pound slot receivers. I'm not knocking the Elijah Moores of the world. Amon-Ra St. Brown, same thing. I'm not knocking him. I've watched film and I'm like, it's like, man, I have a hard time watching him translate. I have an easy time seeing him as good. I see him being a really good football player, an honest football player. He'll go to work. He'll do his job. If he gets 5 balls thrown his way, he's probably catching all 5 of them, and he'll get you 50 yards one game. He might get you 100 another game. All on board, wheels up for Amon-Ra St. Brown in that regard. But I think that's it. He's a good football player, pail in the hand, come to work at 6 a.m. type of guy.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Like I said, he could be a better football player than fantasy player, but like we're gonna see, like he's got nasty hands, and if it works out for him, watch out, because a team is gonna get a stud really, and they're gonna get him later than they should. That's for sure.
What about you, Andrew? How's your list fall?
Yeah, so my list is very similar. This is probably one of the few years that I can recall where the number one receiver, running back, and quarterback were all kind of locked in before the draft in fantasy. I feel like there's usually some discussion, but yeah, it's Jamar Chase at number 1. I think Devonta Smith, I still have him number 2 just because he's a speed demon. I know that he's obviously a little bit lean, and everybody likes to talk about. He can get outside, he can get open. I got Bateman 3rd. I really do like his talent. I think he's got one of those NFL prototype bodies. He's just kind of somebody that you can just kind of see making the next leap. I have Waddle 4th, which I don't know if that's a rare or like a hot take, but I just like what Waddle's been able to do, and he comes from somewhere that produces and makes NFL talent. And then I got Rondale Moore number 5, and I guess I was a little shocked to hear you guys talk about him, but like Jim said, I mean, he's a PPR stud. He's one of those guys. He runs at 4.3 40. You know, you can get him on a slant, get him a 2-yard pass. He can take it 70. I mean, we see Tyreek Hill do that kind of stuff all the time. I'm not saying he's Tyreek Hill. I'm just saying you just get the ball in his hands, yard after the catch, he can get all the way there. Right. So I do think Rondale Moore, he's undersized. He's going to have a hard time fitting in, depending on the spot, could really make or break his career. But you hit the nail on the head again with Crowder. I mean, like, honestly, that's the kind of guy you love as your wide receiver 3. You know, someone you can just throw in there. He gets you tons of points, and you're never upset about it. Right. So, yeah, I think that's kind of my 5. But, again, that changes depending on what film I watch or who I'm talking to or, you know, what pro day just happened. It's just there's so much up in the air until we know landing spots that it's kind of fun to have rankings in general and be like, well, yeah, let's try it this way. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Rondale Moore, I just think there's going to have to be a lot of manufacturing of touches for him. You're going to have to get him on the bubble screens. You're going to have to get him on the screens, a quick wheel route.
But if you're drafting him, aren't you already planning to do that? Like if you draft a guy like Rondale Moore.
Are you drafting him as your wide receiver 3 or 4, like strictly on that roster? Like if, say, look at the situation in Chicago. You got Allen Robinson, you got Darnell Mooney, then you got Rondale Moore. How many targets are you truly going to get them? And then when you get to the point where you have to manufacture those targets, how many are you really going to manufacture them with Tariq Cohen and with David Montgomery? Like, I think it's dependent on landing spot. If he gets the perfect spot on landing spot where they're not afraid to do that, like, I know that this sucks to say, but this is where all the yak guys go to seemingly succeed is San Francisco. I think Rondale Moore could work there because I think if you put him and Ayuk on the field, who do you look at? Who do you go after?
I just think for me. We just talked about San Fran, and it worries me. That offense has got too many mouths to feed. But you put, like, honestly, Rondale Moore in New England. Like, God, how killer would that be? Rondale Moore in Tennessee. How killer would that be, right? Like, there are some of these places that I just think would be terrific for them. And for someone like that, like a small slot guy, right? And even like Elijah Moore, to be honest, he's not the biggest guy either. Like somebody like that, if you're drafting a guy like that, it's probably going to be a 2nd or 3rd. I mean, it's definitely a day 2 pick. You're going to have a plan for him. You're not just going to draft him and bench him. And I think a lot of times you have teams that have more needs at that slot receiver than ever because there's just not a lot of receivers out there doing that. I mean, this is a really odd draft class for receivers too. There's like 2 or 3 really prototypical deep threat wide receiver 1, hang your hat on it kind of guys. And then the rest are all really wide receiver 2 or role fillers, which isn't bad. I mean, there's plenty of fantasy value in that, but it's just not as clear cut as some of the other years where I feel like even last year with like Jefferson and Lamb and Higgins, like these guys are all like, yeah, they're studs. They're going to be great. And Judy, like these big, huge dudes, DK Metcalf a couple years ago, right? Like everybody's like, oh yeah, he's a no-brainer, right? After Chase, it gets kind of messy, right? And there's a couple different places. If Rondale Moore goes the right spot, he could get you, 100 fantasy points easy and not even have to think about it. And you got him in the second in some rounds, in some drafts. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of fluctuation in their values between now and a month from now when the draft is on,
Definitely. I can agree with that.
Absolutely.
Let's break down our top 10. I'll run through my top 10 quick. And again, there's pretty big gaps. So there's actually some people, mostly a lot of 2020 that rear their heads into this for me. I got CeeDee Lamb at 1. I got Jamar Chase at 2. I got Jefferson at 3. Higgins at 4. But like I said, that could shift dramatically if the Chase rumors are true. Devontae Smith at 5. Rashad Bateman at 6, Claypool at 7 for me, Judy at 8, and then I got Michael Pittman at 9 and Laviska Shenault at 10. I know that Pittman is not a guarantee, obviously, and you talked about Paris Campbell. There's T.Y. Hilton coming back this year and stuff. So I understand. I completely get that there's no guarantees he's a number 1, but he proved he can do a lot with a little. If he's got 3 targets, he could put up 60 yards and a touchdown for you. So he can be a really good flex option and stuff. And like when you look at him compared to the class coming in, like I didn't even put Tylan Wallace up there, and I love Tylan Wallace, but that's how little I think from a fantasy perspective that this class is going to translate to fantasy points in the NFL. And what about you, Jim?
You kind of nailed it right there by saying like, I don't really believe this 2021 class, there's enough jobs to be fantasy relevant. So there's not too many guys from the 2021 class in there, but it's CeeDee Lamb, it's Justin Jefferson, it's T. Higgins, Jerry Judy, Jamar Chase, Rashad Bateman, Devontae Smith. Let's go. Where is it up here? I lost my tab. So now I'm like trying to think of it. Who do I have? Denzel Mims. Again, like I get it, like that opportunity. I like Mims. Like I get like the opportunity might not be there for fantasy. He might not pan out, but I like him as my 9. And then Andrew named him, and I didn't really have him that high, but I probably should just because there's a lot of uncertainty there. I don't know what the quarterbacking is going to be after next year, but it probably Chase Claypool, Mim.
Yeah, I had Claypool there too because I think he's just a monster, man. Like if he can clean up his catch rate a little bit, I think it was a 52% catch rate is pretty painful to watch. But if he can get that up into the low 60s, that you're already catching 10, 15 more balls a year, and that's a massive thing for Chase Claypool. That skyrockets him for me. So if he can clean his hands up, definitely a good thing. And there could be some Canadian love that we're just spewing for Chase Claypool there. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, we're seeing a theme, right? I think this year's class, I would say, is not as good as last year's class, right? And maybe that's an understatement. It may be deeper, but it's not top heavy like last year's. So when you're ranking the top players, you're going to have a lot from last year because they had more of the top tier. So I've got Jefferson, Lamb, and Higgins as my top 3. And then there's a small tier break to Chase just because, again, we don't know where he's going. We keep hanging on that, but it's true, right? Also, receivers generally take a little while to get up to speed, so I'm okay to give Chase a little bit of a downgrade out of that first tier for now. After that, I go Ayuk, and again, with the question marks we went through, I just don't know. And then I probably go with some of the newer guys like Smith and Bateman as the next 2 to kind of get us to 7. Number 8, I'll go Judy. Number 9, Waddle. And then number 10, I'll go Rondale Moore. I'll use all 5 from each because I do think Waddle and Rondale Moore have the chance to hit now and be somebody we worry about now and can kind of show fantasy value now. So yeah, in general, that's kind of where I have it, but it's up in the air.
I love it. I like it. I mean, Waddle for me, like I like Waddle. I just hate the comparisons. Like everybody's like Tyreek Hill, Tyreek Hill, Tyreek Hill. If we take that out of it and we just look at him for what he is, he can be really good. but no one's going to be Tyreek Hill. You can drop a comp, but it's just not going to happen, in my opinion.
Well, again, I want to clarify. I didn't say he was Tyreek Hill. I'm saying
No.
plays like what we see Tyreek Hill do. Yeah.
But that's why I've gotten sick of the Waddle thing, because every year there's a Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Henry Ruggs.
This year's Henry Ruggs. Like
Ruggs was on my short list, but I don't trust that offense. You know what I mean? Like if he was on a better team, he's fast as hell, but they don't let him out of the cage. Ugh.
Every year,
the cage
I
unless
hear
Greg Williams is calling the plays.
No, but like
against
every
them.
year, I hear like this guy is the next Calvin Johnson. This guy's the next Tyreek Hill. There's none. There's no next Tyreek Hill.
Rondale Moore is the first Rondale Moore. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It's his own thing. Yeah.
I also hear
I have no issue if you want to draw comps. That's fine with me. I like the idea of drawing comps, but leave these big names out that have made who have really changed the landscape of the game, because they may come around, but that is someone who's not going to have a comp. You're not going to, at the time, like Jamar Chase could change the game, but no one's sitting there saying, oh, he's the next Randy Moss who changed the game. No, like you don't. It just makes no sense.
I'm not saying that you count anybody to Tyreek Hill. I'm just like generalizing. Like I get a lot of these, and then same, let's pump the brakes. I like to say on 1 year rookie quarterback performances, like Justin Herbert, the Tuas, the Burrows, pump them up a little bit. Because it was 2 years ago. Lamar Jackson's the next Pat Mahomes. He's going to be the deal. You can have him as your QB 4 or 5 now in startup drafts. It's crazy, right? And now this year, I'm arguing with a guy at work the other day. He's like, Herbert's the next Mahomes. I go, easy there. I'm like, every year I hear this, somebody's the next Mahomes. Nobody's Mahomes. Nobody's. But
I think it's recency bias. People know the names, people know the faces, people know the big plays that they've made. So that recency bias leads them to say, hey, that 2 of those Waddle plays looked a lot like this one Tyreek Hill play. And that's where the comp comes from.
Yeah. And I want to say this too real quick is as a football fan, I think people need to really take a step back and just really enjoy what we have in the NFL for quarterback play right now. We have Pat Mahomes, we have Josh Allen, we have Justin Herbert, we have potentially Joe Burrow and Tua coming in. We have hopefully Deshaun Watson still playing. Russell Wilson still banging at a good pace for apparently half a season if you look at his numbers. But very, very good quarterback play in this era right now. And it's not just 2-3 guys and then the rest. There is a lot of Super Bowl winning capable quarterbacks playing the game right now. And I think a lot of people are taking that for granted.
I agree. Yeah. It's a good time to be in fantasy because there's a lot of points out there, which makes it fun.
What a great way to wrap it up. What a positive note for Jim to wrap this up on. I knew that we might get out of hand tonight because there was just so much to talk about. And I
always get out of hand.
I definitely hope that this brought value to everybody and that you can look at the 2021 class with a little bit of a different light and look at the value that might be out there in fantasy at all these positions and just to have a broader scope of how you look at things. Because that's why I like to do these shows and look at it, because I see some things, Andrew sees things that I don't see, Jim sees things that I don't see, and I really like that. I like the discussion that we can have about that. So, Andrew, do you want to let the people know one last time where they can find you? A quick shameless plug of anything you're working on.
Yeah, so like I said, the easiest way is on Twitter. That's obviously where we've met and interacted before, but at Andrew Hall FF. I know that I'm probably going to be writing for Pro Football Network again in the fall. I'm not writing for anything for them right now in the off season. I'm kind of a free agent, so to speak. So I'm starting up with Fantasy Pros. I got a couple articles coming out. One's a mock draft that should be kind of interesting, just like a rookie mock to kind of see where things are. But I like to just in the off season, especially Dynasty doesn't get an off season. And so this is the time of year before the draft, from the end of the year to the draft is the calmest it's going to be. Once we know landing spots, once we start to have a little bit more information in that regard, I think that's when this season really starts ramping up in the Dynasty community. So I'm looking forward to having a good summer and getting into some good discussions with people and seeing who's gonna make or break people's teams, right? Who's gonna get drafted really early and be somebody that people rocket up their boards, and then you just kind of have to go, I don't know if that really works, like we saw with CEH last year. So looking forward to that debate. That'll be fun. So yeah, definitely look for me on Twitter, and it'll all be from there.
Love it. And you can follow Jim at Gold Jacket QBs. He's always posted on Twitter, and he's dropping some articles and doing some work. And follow me on Twitter at Connor10. And also make sure to follow the entire crew over at True North FFB. I am the social media expert over there, apparently. Dropping the point after that's one of many. You can also find them find us on YouTube, the TNFF network, and on the old internet, truenorthffb.com. New site launching and coming soon. Thank you again, Andrew. Thank you, Jim, and we will see you all next Tuesday.